The storm came fast, faster than Elias had ever seen in his life. One moment the sky above the repair ship was clear, and the next moment black clouds rolled in like angry waves. Lightning cracked so close to the ship that the metal wall shook. Like thin paper, Elias, a human mechanic, grabbed the controls tightly, trying to keep the ship balanced as the wind pushed it from side to side. He shouted at the engines to hold on, but the storm did not care. It dragged the ship downward like a giant hand pulling a toy. He saw the Forbidden's Valley below, a place every map warned humans to avoid. Before he could change direction, another bolt of lightning hit the wing. The ship spun, alarms screamed, and Elias felt his stomach lift as the ship fell through the trees. The crash was loud and violent. Metal twisting, glass breaking, wires snapping like sharp whips. When everything finally stopped moving, Elias lay still, waiting to see if he was alive. He opened his eyes slowly, breathing hard, his ribs hurting with every breath. The ship was broken so badly that even a full repair team couldn't fix it. He checked the radio, but the storm had fried the circuits. He tried again and again, but nothing worked. No signal, no sound, only silence. He stepped outside, feeling the strange warm air of the alien valley. The trees around him glowed faint blue, and the ground looked like black glass broken into pieces. He built a small shelter from fallen metal pieces and tried to survive with what he had. He used filters to clean the water from the river and ate alien fruits that tasted bitter but kept him alive. Days turned into weeks, and Elias realized he was completely stranded. No ship passed above, no rescue team came, no message reached the sky. Every night he heard strange sounds echoing through the valley. At first they frightened him, deep rumbles that made the ground shake lightly. Sometimes they sounded like thunder, sometimes like breathing. Slow and heavy. He tried to ignore them, telling himself they were just animals he should stay away from. But one night the sound was different. It was not a roar or a growl. It sounded like pain. Long and low. A sound that made Elias stop eating and listen carefully. His heart beat fast as he picked up his small lamp and stepped into the glowing forest. The air felt thicker, and every shadow looked alive. He followed the sound deeper and deeper until the trees opened into a wide clearing. And there, lying like a fallen mountain, was a massive alien dragon. Elias froze where he stood, his mind empty and full at the same time. The dragon's scales were dark silver, shining faintly in the blue light, but many of the scales were cracked or broken, and its wings looked damaged, twisted the wrong way. Its back legs did not move at all. Only its chest rose and fell slowly as it struggled to breathe. The dragon opened its eyes, golden and bright even in its weak state. It stared at Elias, and Elias felt fear run through his entire body. He knew a creature this size could end him with one movement. But the dragon did not attack. It only watched him, tired and hurting. Elias noticed deep cuts on its back, clean and sharp. Not from falling, not from accident. Someone had attacked the dragon, hurt it badly, then left it here to die alone. The idea made Elias feel cold. He knew he should walk away. He was one human, stranded, weak, fighting to survive each day. How could he help something so huge and wounded? But when he turned to leave, the dragon made a small sound, a soft broken noise, like someone begging without words. Elias stopped walking, his heart pulling him back. He turned and walked slowly toward the dragon again. It growled softly, not in anger, but in warning. Elias spoke gently, telling the creature he would not hurt it. The dragon blinked at the sound of his voice. Confused but calmer, he moved closer and examined the wounds. They were deep, and some were infected. Without help, the dragon would not survive. Long, Elias sighed. Knowing what he was about to do was dangerous and maybe foolish, but he could not walk away from a living being silently for help. He took water from his bottle and cleaned the wounds with careful hands. The dragon flinched but did not attack. Elias ripped cloth from his uniform and wrapped the worst cuts as best as he could. The dragon watched him the entire time, golden eyes following every movement. There was something in its eyes he did not expect to see. Hope, pure and clear. By the time the sun began to rise, Elias was tired and covered in dirt and sweat. But he had made a decision. He was stranded. Rescue might never come, and he had limited supplies. But he refused to leave the dragon to die alone. He would stay, he would help, and he would fight for the creature's life, even if it meant risking everything. This was no longer only about survival. It had become a promise. A promise between a human mechanic and a wounded alien dragon who only wanted one thing: not to be abandoned. Elias woke up the next morning with a stiff neck and dirt on his hands. He had slept sitting beside the dragon, keeping a small fire burning through the night so both of them would stay warm. The dragon's slow breathing filled the clearing, heavy but steady, when Elias stood up. The creature's golden eye opened again, watching him carefully. He whispered that he was going to check the area. The dragon blinked slowly, almost like it understood. Elias walked back to his shelter to collect more supplies. Thinking about the strange bond forming between him and the creature, he reminded himself the dragon was dangerous, powerful, and unpredictable. But he also remembered the sound it made when he tried to leave the night before, a sound filled with fear and loneliness. He returned with water, cloth, and a small toolkit. As he approached the dragon again, it lifted its head weakly, but did not growl. Elias spoke softly, telling it he was going to check the wounds. He moved slowly and gently, cleaning each cut. With warm water, the dragon's muscles tensed at times, but it allowed him to work. It was trusting him more than it trusted anything else in this valley. Elias was no doctor, but he had patched up injured workers before. Still, this was different. This was a creature so large that one wrong move could crush him in a second, but he kept working, telling himself that every life deserved a chance. As he cleaned a deep wound into the dragon's spine, he noticed something strange. The cuts weren't only sharp, they had a pattern, almost like a blade with serrated edges, and the angles. They were too clean to be made in anger or panic. They looked like the work of someone who knew exactly where to strike a creature to disable it. Someone had tried to paralyze the dragon on purpose, but while Elias looked around the forest, suddenly, feeling watched, the trees were silent, the valley calm. But something felt wrong. He had been on this planet for months, and he had never seen tracks as large as the ones surrounding the dragon. Whatever attacked it was big, clever, and still out there. The dragon lifted its head weakly and sniffed the air. Its golden eyes sharpened for a moment. It smelled danger. Too, Elias felt a chill rise up his spine. He moved closer to the dragon and whispered that they needed to be careful. The dragon gave a soft rumble. As if agreeing, he placed his hand on its neck for a moment without thinking. The dragon's scales were cold, but under them he felt a slow, steady heartbeat. A strange comfort filled him. He worked until noon, cleaning, wrapping, and adjusting the makeshift bandages. The dragon stayed absolutely still most of the time, breathing slowly, watching him with quiet eyes. When Elias finished, he stepped back to look at his work. The bandages looked terrible, like uneven strips wrapped around a creature 10 times too big. But the wounds looked cleaner now, less infected. Elias sighed in relief. But then another problem came to his mind. The dragon could not move its back legs. If predators came, if the creature that attacked it returned, there would be no escape. Elias needed to build something, a barrier, a shelter, something to help protect the dragon. He picked up a fallen branch and scratched a rough plan in the dirt. The dragon watched him, tilting its head slightly. He explained what he wanted to build, even though he knew the creature couldn't understand him perfectly. Still, speaking helped him think. He spent hours carrying large branches, stones, and metal pieces from his crashed ship. He used ropes from his emergency kit to tie together parts of a protective wall. The wall slowly grew around the dragon, forming a half circle facing the forest. It wasn't strong enough to stop a giant predator, but it would slow one down, and sometimes a few seconds could mean everything. As he worked, Elias noticed the dragon watching him. not with fear or confusion, but with something that looked almost like disbelief, as if it could not understand why a small human would go through so much trouble for it. When the sun began to set, Elias finished the wall and sat down exhausted. His arms hurt, his legs trembled, and sweat ran down his back. The dragon lowered its head toward him and made a soft sound, a calm low vibration that felt like gratitude. Elias smiled weakly, whispering that they weren't finished yet, but they were safer now. The night came quietly, but the silence did not feel peaceful. Elias sat awake for a long time, listening to the forest. Every rustle, every broken twig made him tighten his grip on the small tool he used as a weapon. The dragon shifted slightly, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Elias whispered that he wouldn't leave, not tonight, not ever. He would stay with the dragon until it healed, or until they both died trying. Hours later, when he finally began to doze off, the dragon suddenly lifted its head and growled low. Elias sat up instantly, heart racing. In the darkness beyond the trees, something heavy moved. Branches cracked, leaves rustled, and a deep growl answered from far away. The creature that injured the dragon. It was still in the valley, and it had returned. Elias stood slowly, fear rising in his chest, but he did not run. He stepped closer to the dragon and whispered that they were not alone anymore. The golden eyes met his, filled with trust and warning at the same time. The danger was coming, and whatever happened next, they would face it together. Elias did not sleep at all after hearing the distant growl. Every sound in the forest felt sharper and heavier than before. He sat beside the dragon, holding a small metal rod like it was a real weapon. Even though he knew it wasn't, the dragon lay still, its golden eyes open and fixed on the direction the sound came from. Hours passed slowly, and nothing attacked them that night, but the fear stayed on Elias's skin like cold rain. When the sun finally rose, the forest looked peaceful again, but he knew something dangerous had moved in the dark, something big, enough to threaten even a dragon. He checked the dragon's wounds again, carefully lifting the bandages. Some areas looked better, but the deeper cuts still needed time. The dragon breathed slowly, trusting him enough to stay still. Elias whispered that they had to get stronger, because danger was coming back. The dragon's ear twitched, as if it understood his warning. Elias stood up and stretched his tired arms. He needed food, water, and materials to reinforce the wall around them. He told the dragon he would return soon, pointing at his shelter. The dragon blinked slowly, watching every step he took as he walked away. When he reached the crash site, he looked around with caution. The forest felt too quiet, like everything was hiding from the same creature he heard last night. He collected metal sheets, ropes, and anything else he could use for protection. He also grabbed a small energy torch from the broken ship. Its battery was weak, but it could start a fire faster. He returned to the dragon and began strengthening the wall. He hammered metal pieces into the ground, weaved branches into thick layers, and piled rocks at the base for support. It wasn't perfect, but every bit of extra protection mattered. As he worked, the dragon kept watching him. Elias paused sometimes and spoke to the creature, mostly to calm himself. He told it stories about Earth, about big oceans, tall buildings, and the sound of rain on the roof of his home. The dragon listened with slow blinks, like a child listening to bedtime tales. Hours passed, and the wall grew stronger. Elias finally sat beside the dragon, wiping sweat from his forehead. He whispered that they needed a plan to defend themselves. The dragon closed its eyes halfway and slowly moved its front claws, dragging small patterns in the dirt. Elias frowned, noticing the marks. The dragon was drawing something. It dragged its claw again, making the curved shape, then another. Then a large one behind them. Elias's breath caught in his throat. The dragon wasn't drawing random shapes. It was drawing the creature that attacked it. The picture was messy but clear enough. A large beast with long arms, sharp claws, and 6 eyes. 2 eyes in front, 4 on the sides. A hunter designed to see in all directions. No creature like that lived in natural forests. Elias realized it had to be a predator that someone bred or trained, because no wild animal makes cuts as clean as the ones on the dragon's body. Elias knelt closer, asking if the creature attacked without reason. The dragon shook its head slightly. It dragged its claw again, adding small stick figure shapes. Beside the beast, humanoids, two-legged beings, beings like hunters, beings with weapons. Elias felt the fear turn into anger. Someone didn't just attack the dragon, someone hunted it. And maybe the dragon escaped before they finished the job. If those hunters returned and found Elias helping their target, they wouldn't spare him. The dragon lowered its head again, exhausted from drawing and remembering. Elias gently touched its scales, telling it they would not let the hunters win. The dragon exhaled slowly, a warm breath brushing against his arm. Later, Elias searched the forest carefully for anything useful. He walked farther than before, following broken branches and claw marks in the trees. After a long walk, he found something chilling. A metal dart stuck deep into the trunk of a glowing tree. He pulled it out with effort. It wasn't natural. It was shaped like military tech, smooth steel with a black tip. Elias recognized the design. It was made for piercing tough skin, the same kind used by off-world poachers, hunters who captured rare alien beasts and sold them for profit, he realized. Now why the dragon was alone, someone wanted it dead, or captured alive, and he was standing between them. He rushed back to the dragon, hiding the dart in his pocket so it wouldn't worry. The dragon lifted its head when he arrived, sensing his tension. Elias whispered that trouble was close. The dragon's golden eyes narrowed. He began planning again. He needed traps, alarms, stronger walls. He used thin metal wires from the crash site and tied them between trees. If something touched them, they would create noise. He placed sharp rocks at the edges of the clearing to slow anything charging. As the sun lowered, he sat next to the dragon again. He could hear his own heartbeat, fast and unstable. He told the dragon that he would stay awake tonight. The dragon lowered its massive wings slightly. Elias understood the invitation. It wanted him to sit under it, protected like a small creature seeking shelter. He sat beside the dragon's warm side. The forest began to darken. Elias kept the metal rod in his hand and stared into the shadows. He whispered that they would survive, even if the hunters came for them, even if the beast returned. He was no soldier, no hero, just a human mechanic. But he would not abandon the dragon, not tonight, not ever. Far away, deep in the forest, a long howl echoed again, closer than last night. The dragon's body stiffened. Elias tightened his grip and held his breath. The enemy was approaching, and the real fight was just beginning. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet. As the sun dipped behind the glowing trees, Elias sat beside the dragon, its massive body a warm weight against the chill of the evening. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle in the favre, leaves making him jump. He tightened the straps on the makeshift wall, checking the metal sheets and ropes. The dragon's golden eyes followed him, steady and calm, but alert. Suddenly, a low vibrating growl came from the far side of the clearing. Elias froze, heart pounding. The dragon lifted its head slowly, nostrils flaring, listening. Its eyes glowed brighter in the dim light. The growl came again, deeper this time, and closer. Elias realized it wasn't alone. Whatever had been hunting the dragon before, it had returned, and it brought company. Elias grabbed his metal rod, trying to remember everything he knew about survival. He whispered to the dragon that they had to stay calm. The dragon's wings twitched slightly, readying itself. Elias felt the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. He was alone, stranded, with no reinforcements, and a creature depending entirely on him. Then he saw movement between the trees. Shadows shifting. Two dark figures appeared, hunched and silent, almost gliding over the forest floor. Elias caught a glimpse of their eyes. They were too sharp, too calculating. They carried weapons unlike anything he had seen before. Long, curved blades that glinted even in the low light. And each step they took made the ground tremble faintly. The dragon growled, a low, rumbling vibration that shook the clearing. It raised its head and flared its wings slightly, sending a warning. Through the forest, Elias placed a hand gently on its massive neck, whispering, "Stay calm, I won't let them take you." The dragon's eyes softened at his words, but the tension in its body remained. Elias quickly scanned the clearing, thinking fast. The wall he built was not strong enough to stop skilled hunters. He needed a distraction, something to slow them down. He grabbed a small torch from his pocket and tossed it toward a pile of dry branches. Flames erupted immediately, bright and crackling. The hunters hissed in surprise and slowed their approach. Giving the dragon precious seconds, the dragon flexed its front claws and lifted slightly. Its voice low and deep, Elias realized it was preparing to defend itself. The hunters moved closer, circling slowly, calculating. Elias could see the pattern. They wanted to trap the dragon, force it to move where they could strike. He whispered, "Not tonight," and grabbed a thick rope, tying it to a nearby tree. He pulled it across the path, creating a tripline, hoping it would buy them more time. The first hunter tripped slightly, almost losing balance. The dragon exhaled a blast of warm air, and Elias felt it like heat on his skin. The hunters froze. For a second, then surged forward again. Elias stayed beside the dragon, holding the rope and the metal rod. He knew it was a small chance against these attackers, but he could not leave the dragon alone. The dragon's eyes glowed, and it shifted its massive body. Its claws dug into the dirt, ready to strike Elias. Whispered calmly, "Stay behind me." The dragon obeyed, lowering its body slightly. Wings flaring like shields, the hunters advanced slowly, studying the opening, calculating their move. Elias noticed their hesitation, and a plan formed in his mind. He grabbed a few rocks and tossed them toward the hunters, making noise to one side. The dragon hissed sharply and lunged forward, not fully attacking but moving enough to scare the hunters. One of them stumbled, another froze, and Elias realized they were not used to fighting something alive and enormous. The dragon followed his subtle commands with instinctive understanding. Together, human and dragon were already forming a small team. The hunters regrouped, moving faster now, circling to flank. Elias realized the wall alone would not stop them. He whispered to the dragon to get behind the wall. It obeyed, dragging its injured legs carefully. Elias stood in front, holding the torch high, yelling, "Back! Stay away!" For a moment, everything froze. The hunters hesitated, unsure. The dragon growled low, rumbling like distant thunder. Elias could feel the vibrations through his chest. He realized the dragon was not weak, it was dangerous even in its injured state. And it trusted him. The hunters exchanged signals, hissing and whispering in a language Elias did not understand. They moved again. But the dragon struck suddenly, its claws scraping the ground and sending one hunter tumbling back. Elias followed, swinging the metal rod with all his strength. Hitting the nearest attacker's weapon, the hunters froze. Realizing this human mechanic was not running away, he was fighting, beside the dragon. Hours passed like minutes, every movement tense, every sound amplified. Finally, as darkness settled fully, the hunters backed away slowly. Disappearing into the forest, Elias dropped to his knees, breathing hard. The dragon lowered its head, exhausted but alive. It nudged Elias gently. As if to say thank you, Elias smiled, wiping sweat and dirt from his face. He realized something powerful had happened. The dragon trusted him enough to fight with him, and he realized that alone, stranded, he had become more than a mechanic. He had become a protector, a friend, and a human the dragon could rely on. The valley was quiet again, but Elias knew it would not stay safe forever. The hunters would return, or maybe something worse, but for now, human and dragon survived together, stronger for having faced fear side by side. Elias whispered into the night, promising the dragon, "I will never leave you. Not now, not ever." The fire had burned low by morning, leaving behind soft red embers that glowed quietly in the ash. Elias sat leaning against the dragon's side, eyes half closed, every part of him aching from the long night. The hunters had left, but they would come back. He didn't need a warning to know that. The way they moved, the way they studied the dragon, they weren't finished. They had just retreated to prepare for something worse. The dragon rested, its breathing slower but still heavy. Its wounds were healing, but slowly, and the damage to its spine remained unchanged. Its back legs still didn't move. Elias knew the dragon would never outrun danger, not like this. He stood up, rubbing his eyes, and picked up the bent metal rod he had used as a weapon. It was nearly broken now. If the hunters came with stronger tools, it wouldn't help. He needed something better, something that could actually stop them. The crashed ship came to mind. He hadn't stripped it completely yet. There were still tools inside, maybe even weapons stored deep in the emergency vault. Elias looked at the dragon and whispered, "I'll be back soon." The dragon blinked slowly. As if it understood his words again, he pointed toward the forest, then to himself, then back at the dragon, repeating softly, "Stay, I'll come." Back. The dragon gave a soft rumble but didn't move. Elias ran back through the glowing trees, careful to avoid the tripwires he had set earlier. When he reached the wreck, he climbed into the broken hull and searched the lower levels. He opened the floor panels, digging into storage compartments filled with dust, smoke-stained crates, and emergency rations. And then he found it, a small box locked with a rusted code panel. He entered the emergency override code. The box hissed open, and inside he found an old energy blaster, low power, but enough to slow down a hunter. He also found shock spikes metal rods that, when planted into the ground, sent out an electric pulse if stepped on. He stuffed everything into his backpack and rushed back through the woods. When he returned to the dragon, it was alert, eyes focused on the trees. Elias turned quickly, thinking the hunters had come early, but it wasn't them. A large four-legged creature, almost like a wolf, but twice the size, stood just outside the clearing, sniffing the air. Its skin was smooth like stone, and its eyes were all black. Elias froze, unsure what it wanted. The wolf creature took one step forward, then stopped. It wasn't growling, just watching. The dragon stayed still, but Elias could feel its tension rising. He slowly reached for the energy blaster and aimed it low. Warning the creature not to come closer, it blinked, then turned and vanished into the trees without a sound. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That wasn't a hunter's beast, it was wild. But smart. Something told him it wasn't here to attack. It had seen the dragon and chosen not to fight. Maybe the creatures of this planet respected the dragon more than the hunters did. He planted the shock spikes around the perimeter, placing them under loose leaves where footsteps might land. He showed the dragon where not to step by drawing in the dirt. The dragon watched carefully and nodded slowly. Its understanding surprised Elias more and more every day. By evening, Elias had rebuilt the wall again, this time higher, stronger, with metal reinforcements and rope nets. He placed warning chimes made from spare wires and scrap metal. They'd ring if anything touched them. He walked around the hole, clearing twice before finally sitting beside the dragon again. He looked at its face, massive and calm, and whispered, "You still haven't told me your name." The dragon tilted its head slightly. He laughed softly and said, "I'll call you Vayer." The dragon's eyes brightened at the name. Elias wasn't sure, but something told him the creature liked it. That night, the stars came out for the first time in days. The sky above the valley was clear, filled with bright blue clusters Elias had never seen on Earth. He told Vayer about the constellations from home, drawing them in the dirt. Vayer listened silently, resting its head close to him, its warm breath wrapping around him like a soft wind. Then as the night deepened, Elias saw something above the trees, a red flare. It floated for only 3 seconds before disappearing. Not natural, not an accident, a signal, and not his. Elias stood up quickly, staring at where the flare had been. Someone was nearby, someone with tools, signals, and reason to hide. The hunters were back, and this time, they weren't coming quietly. He turned to Vare and whispered, "We're out of time." Vare lifted its head slowly, eyes glowing again, stronger now than the night. Before, it pushed itself up on its front legs, dragging the back ones slightly forward. It couldn't walk fully yet, but it was trying, and that gave Elias hope. He grabbed the blaster and checked the charge. He whispered, "We're going to fight, aren't we?" Vare growled softly, then nodded. They stood there, human and dragon. Both wounded, both tired, but both ready. Ready for the hunters, ready for the storm, and ready to protect each other at any cost. Elias spent most of the night staring at the spot where the red flare had appeared. His grip on the blaster never loosened. The forest was quiet, but that silence felt fake, like something dangerous was waiting, watching. Breathing in the dark, Vare lay behind him, breathing slow but steady. Its wounds had started to close, but the back legs still didn't respond, even when it tried to move. They dragged uselessly behind. Elias hated that. He hated seeing something so strong trapped inside its own body. When dawn finally arrived, the sky turned pale blue, and the trees sparkled with morning mist. Elias stood up, stretched his aching back, and walked to the edge of the clearing. The wires he had placed were untouched, the trap still hidden under leaves, but he knew the enemy was closer now. He returned to Vare and gently placed a hand on its scales. "Morning," he whispered, trying to keep his voice calm. Vare turned its head slightly and exhaled a low rumble, not quite a growl, just tired. Elias knelt beside it and checked the bandages, carefully removing the ones that had soaked through. He cleaned the wounds, wiped away dried blood, and placed new cloth, tighter and cleaner. The dragon closed its eyes as he worked, but didn't flinch. It had begun to trust him completely. That trust scared Elias sometimes, because if he failed, it would suffer for it. Later that day, Elias heard a sound he hadn't heard in weeks. A voice crackled faintly through the radio unit from the crashed ship. He dropped the tools in his hand and ran back to the wreckage. The voice was weak, broken by static, but real. It repeated the same words over and over. "Rescue ship inbound. Last signal. Identify survivor." Elias grabbed the radio and tried to respond. "This is Elias Reed, human mechanic, stranded on planet V, March 9th Delta. Still alive, I'm not alone." He waited, but the static returned. No reply, just silence. He tried again, louder, desperate. But the radio hissed and then went dead. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the broken device in his hands. A rescue ship might be coming, maybe. But would it come in time? Would it even find him in this dense valley? And if it did, would it take Vare with him, or see the dragon as a threat? He walked back slowly, his thoughts racing. When he returned, Vare was trying to lift itself with one wing and both front claws. Its muscles trembled with effort, but its body shifted slightly forward. It collapsed with a low grunt, tired and frustrated. Elias rushed forward and held its head gently. "Yeezy," he whispered. "Not yet, but soon." Vare blinked at him, then looked toward the sky, as if it too had heard the voice on the radio, as if it knew help was out there. That night, Elias couldn't sleep again. His thoughts were split, half on survival, half on the future. If the rescue ship came, would they let Vare come with him? Would they believe the dragon was peaceful? Would they understand the bond they had formed? And what if the hunters arrived before the ship did? Around midnight, he heard the chimes ring. Soft but clear, something had touched the wire. He grabbed the blaster and turned quickly. Vare growled low, already lifting its head, eyes glowing in the dark. Figures moved in the trees. This time, there were 3 of them, not just hunters, but armored, carrying stun nets and long hooks. Poachers. They stepped forward silently, surrounding the clearing. One of them raised a glowing weapon and shouted, "Step away from the target, human." Elias stood firm, blaster raised. "No," he said, his voice shaking but clear. "She's not your target. She's not your property." The poacher took one step closer. "She's valuable," he said coldly. That thing is worth a planet's payment. Move before we make you. Veer growled louder, rising slightly on her front legs. Elias aimed the blaster straight at the leader's chest. You'll have to kill me first, he said. For a moment, no one moved, then the poacher fired. The net, Elias dodged barely, and fired the blaster. It hit the side of the nearest attacker, throwing him backward. Veer roared. A thunderous sound that shook the trees and made birds scatter from the branches. The ground trembled as she pushed forward, ignoring the pain, dragging her legs behind her. The poachers were not ready for her fury. She swung her head, knocking two of them into the trees. Elias fired again, hitting the last one in the arm. They ran, tripping over the shock spikes, falling, crawling away. When silence returned, Elias collapsed beside Veer, his chest heaving. She lay still, blood trickling from her side, but she was alive. He reached out and touched her gently. I'm sorry, he whispered, but we did it. We made them run. She looked at him, eyes dim with pain but steady. He whispered again. You're not a prize. Veer, you're not a thing. You're family, in the sky above. Faint and far away, a light blinked. It wasn't a flare. It was a ship. Someone was coming, and this time, Elias would make sure they knew. He wasn't leaving without her. The light in the sky grew brighter with each passing hour. Elias stood at the edge of the clearing, watching it blink between the stars. It was real, not a trick, not a flare. This time, it was a ship. Someone was finally coming. Veer lay behind him, weak but awake. Her eyes followed him everywhere he moved. She had bled during the night, but Elias had stopped the worst of it. She was breathing, alive, but her body had taken too much damage to move far. Elias knew they didn't have long. The poachers might return with more men, and even if the rescue ship landed, there was no guarantee they would help. To most outsiders, Veer would just look like a threat, a wild beast, too dangerous to trust. But she wasn't. She had proven herself over and over. She had saved him as much as he had saved her. He tightened the last signal flare and pressed the activation key. A long, sharp pulse of light shot into the sky. That was it, the final signal. Now all he could do was wait. Hours passed, the sky brightening into soft daylight. Then a deep rumble shook the trees. Elias turned toward the horizon and saw it. A silver rescue shuttle cutting through the clouds. Engines roaring like thunder. The shuttle landed near the crash site, its ramp lowering with a sharp hiss. Two figures in white suits stepped out, scanning the area with sleek black visors. Elias walked toward them with his hands raised, blaster hidden behind his back just in case. One of the crew lifted their hand and spoke through a voice modulator. You the mechanic? Elias Reed? He nodded, yes, been stranded for months. They looked around, confused by the forest. Vitals confirmed. The second one said, You're lucky. We only caught a partial signal. Then their eyes landed on Veer. Their voices changed. What's that? Elias stepped in between them quickly. She's not dangerous, he said. She's with me. I wouldn't be alive without her. The crew exchanged glances. That thing looks like a Drake-class predator, one of them muttered. She's not a predator, Elias said firmly. She's injured. She's intelligent. She understands everything we say. They hesitated, uncertain. One of them raised a scanner and pointed it toward Veer. She growled softly, but didn't move. Elias whispered to her, It's okay. Stay calm. She held still, trusting him. The scanner beeped a few times, showing life signs and injury levels. Massive spinal trauma, organ damage, internal bleeding. She won't survive long without medical care. Then help her, Elias said. You have the tools, right? One of the rescuers looked at him like he was crazy. She's not a registered species. No rights, no ID. She's a wild creature, not a citizen. Elias stepped closer, his voice shaking with anger. She is not just a creature. She is the only reason I'm alive. She deserves help just like I do. She saved me, fought for me. Let me sleep beside her when I was freezing. Tell me that doesn't count. They looked at each other again, uncertain. Then one of them asked, quietly, if we say no, what will you do? Elias took a deep breath. I'll stay, he said. I won't leave her behind. Not now, not ever. The silence that followed felt like an entire year. The crew checked their orders again, looked at their ship, then back at Elias. Then one of them sighed. All right. But you carry the risk. If anything goes wrong, it's on your record. Elias didn't even hesitate. I'll sign whatever you want. Just help her. They called for a medical drone, which hovered down from the shuttle and scanned Veyer's body. It released small tools that began sealing wounds, injecting stabilizers. Veyer flinched once. But let the machines work. Elias stayed close, speaking softly, telling her it was okay now. When the medical pod arrived, the crew paused again. It's not built for her size, one of them warned. Elias walked to the shuttle and opened the cargo bay doors. Then we make space, he said. She's going with us. Together. They cleared crates and removed metal panels with slow effort and support straps. They guided Veyer into the cargo bay. She groaned from pain, but never snapped, never fought. She trusted Elias completely. When the shuttle rose into the sky, Elias sat beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder as she drifted in and out of sleep. He looked out the window as the planet faded below them. He had arrived as a mechanic, but he was leaving with something far more powerful. Not a dragon, not a pet, but a friend. A bond that no species chart or policy could erase. And when they reached the stars, he already knew the fight wasn't over. There would be people who didn't understand, people who would fear her, try to take her again. But Elias would be ready, because he hadn't just rescued a dragon. He had made a promise, one he would keep for the rest of his life. Wherever they landed next, she would not be abandoned. She would never be alone again.